A very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the agenda. My name is Tyitende. The country is still mourning the death of President Hage Geingob, which came as a shock on the 4th of February. So much is being said, country is sad, and it was so saddened to so many people. And the conversations around that continues. And tonight on the platform, we are also extending or expanding on that conversation with Wonder Guchu. He is a veteran journalist based in Windhoek, as well as Rui Tyitende, who is an academic and an independent political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you for making time. Thank you really for making time. Let me start with you, Rui. Maybe your reaction to the death of the president first.
It was quite shocking, but not surprising, at least to me. Last year in August, when I was contacted by the media because of the operation that the president had in South Africa, heart operation, and I said, look, the presidency is a demanding job, and in order for the president to fulfill his constitutional obligations, he needs to be fit, health-wise, psychologically, and otherwise. Of course, those comments were rebutted by the office of the president, saying that the president is as fit as a fiddle. He's healthy. We shouldn't lecture the president about his health. We are not medical experts. But I also made the argument to say, look, we have had more than 13 African heads of state that died while in office because they were not being transparent about their health. It was in that framework that I actually made that argument that even if the presidency is coming out to say, look, the president is going for a health operation, that's good, all and well. But my view is that they were not really transparent. And it actually goes against the president's formula of transparency plus accountability equals trust. And then again, in January, when we heard that the president went for cancer treatment or cancer cells was detected in his body, I again made the same call. And they said again, no, it's not a death sentence. The president is well enough to execute his mandate, so we shouldn't be bothered. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, the president is no more. So it came as a shock to me, but I wasn't really surprised because even last year in October, I saw him physically at State House, and I could see this is someone that is not well. I'm not a medical doctor, but Toivo, you've seen our grannies at the villages or in other urban centers. They look frail, they look disoriented, and something told me that the guy is not well, and he admitted it himself at one occasion, saying that these days he gets sick a lot. So what does that tell you? So in my view, again, I was shocked, but at the same time, I saw it coming.
Yeah. Wanda, your reaction?
Yeah, every death shocks, but for President Hage Geingob's death, we can't talk about separating people because he was being open about his health. And if I remember well, there was a time when he even said, I won't be there for no long. I remember that. So shocking, yes, just like every other death, but surprising, no.
Yeah.
And people could actually see he was not attending international conferences, and he was cutting down on that.
Did the pace at which this whole thing unfolded, at least, could that be perhaps the most shocking part of, if anything, death will happen to all of us? But on the 19th of January, there was a statement put out that the president went for a medical follow-up. Prior to that statement being issued, personally, I was already aware because somebody sent me an SMS in the morning saying the president has been rushed to the hospital. Rushed. But the statement in the afternoon said, he went for a follow-up, and that I think that is the day that they announced that there were cancerous cells detected in him. Fast forward from that, we are told that the president is going abroad for treatment, and then he came back 2 days earlier than what the statement had said, because they had said he'll come back on the 2nd of February, which was a Friday, but he came back on the 31st of January. And 4 days later, he was gone. The pace, perhaps, of how these events unfolded?
Yeah, but Trevor, don't forget that State House put out another statement saying he's in the ICU.
Yeah, that came afterwards. Because remember,
that was a day before the death announcement.
Yes, because he came back, and they said, you know, he came back, he's really responding well to treatment.
Yeah.
And even when people were speculating that, oh no, apparently the president has passed away. And that is, the statement that you're referring to is the one that baffled me the most, because I found it very unnecessary, if not insensitive. Because they said, in the statement that announced ICU for the first time, they're saying he was improving. So we've never heard of him being in ICU before, but the day you announce it, you're saying that he's improving. 24 hours later, you announce that the man has passed away.
Yeah, but I think it was a way of putting it out within the nation to say you can expect anything. Because I also read that, and then I was trying to link it to the treatment in the US, and then the coming back, and then the ICU statement, and then less than 24 hours, then the announcement of his passing on came. So I think it was trying to manage it, because they were taking people through the processes. This is where it is now. Now the ICU, it actually prepared people who saw that statement when the death announcement came. So this is exactly why I'm saying the surprising part was slowly being taken away, but the shock that comes with the death remained.
Yeah. Rui, one of the issues that emerged in Parliament this week is members of the opposition. We saw the Pafras Nkwilongo of NEFF, and then Swanu Member of Parliament, Dr. Tangeni Yambo, actually raising questions around the circumstances of the president's death, going as far as suggesting that the circumstances be investigated. Of course, Speaker Kachavivi said, he will not will not avail a platform for that in Parliament. But do you think these are legitimate questions?
I think they are in our democracy, because President Geingob was just not an ordinary citizen. He was the head of state. He was the chief executive of our country. And I actually now have more questions based on what people like Bohamba Shifeta have said, based on what the Prime Minister has said, based on what the Director General of the Namibia Central Intelligence have said, that they knew that the president was not well because he confided in them. Bohamba's statement was actually more damning, to say that he knew that the president told him it was only going to live for like 6 or 8 months. So the whole narrative that has been peddled by State House since last year, they were not being transparent, Toivo, if you look at those admissions that are coming now. And what qualifies this more for me is the choreographed script or speeches that people are supposed to deliver at his memorial. You're only supposed to talk about Geingob as a global statement, as a Pan-Africanist. Do not steer off on issues of personal anecdotes. What does that tell you? Because they've seen what these people have said. And these are senior government officials that were deemed to be close to the president. So an investigation, in my view, is definitely warranted, because someone is not telling the truth here. And we don't want to go into speculations. Perhaps after we have given him a decent burial, we can maybe open up the chapter.
Yeah. Wanda, on that same question?
I'm not sure who should be investigated. I saw the statements from Swanu and NEFF. But the question that I had then was, who are we investigating and what are we investigating? Are we investigating the family to try as much as they could to do whatever they had to? Who are we investigating? Are we not being emotional here to try and dig for things that are not there? Because I also had these questions. Now that Rui is saying it, so can we be clear? We are investigating who and for what?
I think it would be the circumstances under which he died. No one in particular.
Yeah.
The circumstances under which the president died, because that for me is not clear. Yeah, not any person to say we are going to investigate Toivo because he was not telling the truth or he was not forthcoming. Rather, the circumstances, the events that unfolded, and now the admissions of these senior government officials. Maybe they can tell us exactly what happened, or a commission of inquiry from a health point of view could be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we are going to take this argument further, Popo Amba Shifeta said the president confided in him that he might have 6 months or 8. So it was clear that this was inevitable. So does it warrant an investigation? Are we investigating him being flown to the States? Or we are investigating some negligence?
So
that we are saying someone could have been negligent.
yeah.
And if we tie that to what Shifeta said, he confided in him that the doctor had said either 6 months or 8.
Maximum.
So it was inevitable.
So
it could still have come whether he had been flown to the States or he hadn't been flown. So should we still try to push? And this is why I am saying we need to be so clear. This investigation, are we investigating he is being flown to the States?
Yeah.
Are we alleging that someone was negligent in a person's death that had been proclaimed to say 6 or 8 months?
Yeah.
Are we not being emotional here?
Yeah.
Or are we not trying to be relevant when
Let
it's
me-
not necessary to be?
Let me put it to you this way, Wanda, my understanding. So the information that we are working with as a country is bare minimal. We were just told the president had cancerous cells detected in him. What does that mean? Do you want to tell us, because we had to interpret things. At Namibian Sun, I called our health reporter to Imo in the north. I said, look, you are the one who does health stories for us. What does cancerous cells diagnosis mean? Does it mean the person has cancer, or what does it mean? Or can you have those? Can you have that diagnosis without necessarily being having cancer? So we needed that clarity. So we don't know what kind of cancer. Of course, we are now picking up that it was pancreatic cancer. When did he actually get that, for example? Because if the president, what Rui is saying here, the 6 months, 8 months period, is I don't, because we are told that when he was in, was it in Dubai where the first family went? Maybe even that trip where the grandchildren of the president and his children and everybody went, maybe it was a way to say, look, I don't have much time anymore. Let's have one last time together as a family and do this. But so when did the actual diagnosis happen? But secondly, perhaps, Wanda, for me what is important also is the circumstances around the president getting picked up from the country. We don't know by who. We followed on that airline movement app. We saw he was picked here. He went to West Africa. I think they made a stop by in Senegal or Mali, one of those countries, before he proceeded to the USA. We don't know who picked him up from here. It's our head of state. We were just told that he will not be using state resources. The presidential falcon will be here parked. We don't know where he went in the USA, to who. So these things, and then he came back early, and we were told it's a novel treatment In other words, it's a first of its kind sort of treatment. These are...
Yeah, I understand that. Look, I think this is where we need to be so clear. Where do we draw the line? Of him being a family man.
Yeah.
Of him, his sickness being confidential.
Yeah.
Not saying everything, not putting out everything, not us demanding that the family was supposed to tell us everything, right? Where do we draw the line? Should we then lift the banner to say, simply because he's the president, we must know every move that he makes, we must know every little sickness that he suffers, we must know every decision that goes on about his personal life? Because sickness, to me, whether you are a leader, maybe I'm wrong, it's a personal thing, right? It is up to me to stand up and tell people that, guys, this is what I have. If I don't want, you can't force me, right? So are we saying simply because he was the president, so we needed to know when the diagnosis was done and how long he has been suffering? Should we know? Because if they don't want, if the family says this is personal, can we then lift the banner to say, he was the president, so we needed to know. There are some things that are sensitive.
Before I give Rui a chance, I'll just explain the limits. I can tell you now, Wanda, that I'm not suggesting at all that they can never be, that they might just lift the lead and say, oh, look at the man, he's sick like this and that. No. But there are parameters within which I don't think we have stretched the parameters to the bare minimum. For example, if the president had 6 months to live, did he need to continue leading the nation under such circumstances? Because that is a very sick person. And he is presiding over the affairs of the country. He had 6 months, and we are saying, you know, where were the advisors? Mr. President, at this stage, you can no longer lead the country. Maybe you step down, focus on your health, focus on your recovery, focus on the few last days that you have. Spend them with your grandchildren. Maybe. But to suggest that a person has 6 months and we say, oh no, Mr. President, there's a rally in Katima Molilo, there's an Indaba in Cape Town, there ought to be some limitation. And for me, that is where the issue is.
Before Rui comes in, let me just look. Yeah. We deal with information. If we have got one source, I understand what Pohamba Shifeta said. But it was a conversation between the two of them. Yes. To me, I created room. It might be true. I'm not saying he lied. No. Unless we can have a third person who can stand up and say, the president also said that to me. Right?
Or we could have said 24 months.
Anything. So since we deal with information, people are coming out now to say a lot of things. Now, I also had question marks, right? I don't know how close they were for him to just blurt it out, right? It's very sensitive to talk about. I've got 6 or 8 mamans. And if that information had gone out, it could have caused instability. Because now, like you are saying, people will be saying, so we are being led by someone who is very sick, like you were saying. Yes. So information has to be managed. Situations must be managed. And this is why I am saying, I heard him once saying, I'll be gone soon. Yeah. And I remember that. So if you were following all his speeches, you could actually tell, but no one could actually tell how soon this could be. And this is why I'm still questioning the probe into his death. Yeah. And I'm still saying we can demand, yes, but it's up to the family to decide to tell you, to say the diagnosis was made on this day and where, and he has been with this condition for this long. If they don't want, no one can lift the president Babana and say he was our president. We need to know. Remember that he was a father a grandfather, and a husband.
Great.
So if the family says we don't want this information out, you can't force them.
I agree, but Rui, engage me on this. So, because you had a very public, and you referred to it, public sort of fallout with these guys, because with State House, because you commented, I can't remember what you said. I don't know whether you said that he must be more open, or that there was a group of analysts who sort of spoke in unison to say, look, if the president is not well, he must step aside maybe and focus on his recovery. I don't know whether that was you said.
And then call for reshuffle and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So was the context then at the moment, because when you're talking about the probe here, Rui, it could mean that again, it's like you said, it's not a probe to find anyone guilty. It's to establish whether people around him, for example, were being selfish. Because they know if the president is gone, maybe I'm the press secretary, I might have to also now leave. If I'm an advisor in the presidency, if the president steps aside, I might have to be also, because the new president might become with his own people, therefore let's keep the men around. Is there some sort of truth that we need to establish when you're talking about an investigation?
It could be, Toivo, but I don't want to dwell into the game of speculation. But one can deduce certain things based on public statements that have been made. One is that we all know that the president was driving his ambitious programs, like the green hydrogen, the oil and gas discoveries, because that was part of his signature development programs for Namibia, especially the green hydrogen. Could it be that there were personal or business interests that wanted the president to remain in office to conclude these deals? We don't know for certain. Could it be that there are investors, especially in the oil and gas industry, that wanted to finalize certain deals before the president steps down? It could be that the president even wanted to step down and say, guys, I'm not well, I want to step down. But politics by its very nature, it's unpredictable, it's a lot of uncertainty, it's also a game of deception and lies and manipulation. So we will never really know what happened until you were in that room, or unless someone comes and say, look, the president actually wanted to step down because of A, B, and C. But for me, I don't want to go into the game of speculation, especially if I don't have hard information at hand.
I understand that. So, Wanda, look at this. In South Africa, last year, at some point, Cyril Ramaphosa, when the Palapala report came out, we were told that he almost stepped down. And his henchman said, Mr. President, you are not going anywhere. And somehow, because I remember crafting a story already to put it out, and my guts just told, because we were waiting for the formal announcement, and I didn't want to be beaten to that because it was very late in the evening. And I said, let me stick around the office and just observe. And I waited for that announcement. It never came. We later learned that there are people who said, Mr. President, you're not going anywhere, but it was partially because they were afraid for their own jobs to say that, a new cabinet, a new president might come in and then all of us will be gotten rid of. In the situation of the president, we have seen some very disturbing information that came out in the past couple of days. One, we are told, we saw the governor of the Bank of Namibia saying the president had to sign off from his sick bed the appointment of the directors of the Bank of Namibia. He thought he was portraying a man as a brave man who was obsessed with working even when he's not well. But what came out of that is a very bad message. That people were saying, Mr. President, as if people are saying, Mr. President, we don't know how many days you have left, please sign things. That is wrong. The second thing is that we are told that there were people on that plane to the USA. We are told, for example, that James Mnyupe was on that plane. We ought to know the context. We're not going to speculate and say it was wrong. Maybe, you could say, as a sick person, you could say, you come along with me. We don't know. But that context needs to be explained very well, because Mr. Mnyupe, whom I respect very much, is driving together with the president the green hydrogen evolution. And people have started speculating already, oh, why were they together? Did they make the old man sign things again? While, all these kind of things. That's why for me, an investigation is not again to find anyone guilty, is to really the circumstances. That is the key word. What were the circumstances of all these things happening like that?
No, I wanted that clarification, because people, when they talk about an investigation, some people are just saying it. So there's no set criteria to say this is what we want to look into. And of course, if someone is sick, their mental capacities are diminished. And the example that you have just gave, I also saw, I listened to that, and I had a lot of questions. But again, we need to be so clear with the visit to the states. I saw that one of James being on the plane, and I also saw what people are saying. But like Rui is saying, unless we know what went on and what was that, we may not be in a position to make an informed conversation. And we also want to know if there's an acting president, where does his powers start and end? Because if the one is sick, was the acting president not authorized to go and sign off?
Yeah.
I think if we, and these are some of the things, if we are going to call for that, like I was asking earlier on to say, we need to really know this kind of investigation. What is it that we are looking for?
Yeah.
So these are some of the things, but why would you take documents to the hospital and ask someone who has got an acting person to sign off?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why these motives, it brings into question the motives of this behavior by senior government officials. Rui, tell me about, give me your take on the issue of transparency around the people who picked up the president from here. Do you think that it's strictly a private matter, it doesn't matter who picked him up, or do you think that the country ought to know who are these people? What will be their natural interest in taking the president out of the country? Because a lot of speculation came out of that. They're saying it's people from Qatar, and some people are saying these are people who had interest apparently in the harbor project at the coast. We don't know who they are. And you can't say, no, it's not true, because the details are not there.
No, absolutely. I mean, someone can even speculate to say maybe it was Boko Haram that picked him up, because we don't know.
Yeah.
The State House is not forthcoming with the information.
Yeah.
But one thing that was of concern to me is the fact that the Office of the President said in their statement that it was medical professionals, specialists that were going to treat the president for free. Who are these people? Wonder you would know there's no such thing as a free lunch. Who is it that cares so much about the president that they would want to put him on this novel therapy? As you said earlier, it's a trial. It has never been tested before. So it can work or it cannot work. But the circumstances around that, again, leaves a lot of questions than answers. And I don't think this is the right time for us to be doing all of these speculations. I think the information should just come from the Office of the President to say, look, it was Wanda, it was Toivo, it was Rui that flew the president to the United States for his treatment. Then we will really have more questions or get clarity on why exactly these individuals deemed it necessary or appropriate to fund the trip of the president. He's the head of state. The state should have paid for it. Why should it be individuals or medical professionals that are nameless?
Absolutely. So in I don't know whether it was 2014 World Cup, when the the then president-elect, I think, or he was not even president-elect at the time. Yeah, he wasn't, because the World Cup must have taken place around June, July in Brazil, and the president, and Hage Geingob was only elected in November later that year. But the path was very clear that he was already the candidate of the ruling party, and that he was going to be elected was not in question. But there was already a fuss about how can private individuals, which were his friends that we know locally here, who flew him to Brazil. But people were already complaining. But the weight of transparency on Hage Geingob as prime minister at the time was not as the same as the one that we have now. So surely now the demand for clarity is even more about these people who took him.
Yeah,
What was their interest?
I understand the circumstances here, but I still want to go back to what I asked earlier. When does the family become responsible for their person, even if the person is the president? I understand your
this
point.
Was not the family.
Yes, yeah.
This
This
was not the
the
family.
arrangements when he went to the states. Yeah. Was it being organized by the state, or it was within the family? Who linked up with whoever came to pick him up? Was it the state? Do we have that information? Or it was the family? So at what point, and I understand what you are saying, that there are people who might act because they've got ulterior motives and interests. That I understand. But look, we are talking about someone who had been given 6 or 8 months. Yes. What power would he have to decide on who gets what? If we are saying the people who picked him up here, they might have this or that, but what power would he have? Well, if we can establish that, then I also understand the link that is being made with whoever picked him up here, and the inclusion of James on the trip. But all these things, is it not a matter of conjecture, because we don't really know, and we really need to know. My experience with sickness or death is, if you are caught up in the life of someone who is sick, you do anything and everything to try and make sure that the person survives. So we might be coming up with all these theories and all these demands, but there is a family that is grieving.
I get that.
Yes. And after the burial and all the testimonies and everything else, the family will be stuck with the loss. The nation, yes, but the family will be stuck with the loss. Do we guys still want to push it onto them to say, why did you guys allow him to be picked up? And now all the other thing of him being a president and all the projects that are running in, I understand that the transparency that is needed. That I understand. I also understand that there might be people who were scared of losing their jobs. I know this is what was done to Mugabe. In 2008, the guy said, I no longer want to be. And the guy said, no, you stay there. So yes, so this is what is done all over, because there are people who use leaders to benefit. So if we are saying the investigation has to be based on that, fair and fine. But are we not pushing it like in the face of the family to say, we want to know this, we want to know this?
No, I think there's, we recognize the parameters again, yeah, of where the boundaries of where the public have the right to know. Because we don't have the right to know absolutely everything. Yeah. But like I said earlier, did we exhaust the entire landscape that we are allowed to demand clarity? For example, if the family of the president is taking him to the USA, perfect, no problem. But the moment you tell us that this money is not coming from the family, it's foreign people. Who are these people? What are their interests in having our president treated? because it could be really just some nice people who have no interest whatsoever for anything in return. But the moment you hide their identity, there will be questions, because the issue here is association. In the papers recently, there was a story about the Minister of Defense, Franz Kapofi, having been to a farm of someone that they think, and the media is asking, what is this association about? There is no suggestion that anything criminal took place during that visit, but the mere association is being questioned. So for us, it's the same thing here. The association of our president with foreign people needed to be clarified. This is his friend. They went to school together, but he became wealthy and he just wanted to assist, and this is the person. Or, and the novel treatment there, because when the president came back, there was this statement saying, yeah, no, we are going to use
transferred here.
Yes, this is going to be given to Namibians. What kind of treatment was this? What did they detect? Was it a successful novel treatment? You know, all these kind of things. But maybe I'm laboring the point. Let's go for a quick break and then we return.
Paints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neo Paints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neo Paints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
The conversation continues on the agenda. Now, gentlemen, let's lower the temperature a little bit. What is the legacy of the president to you, Rui?
Well, Toivo, the president has a mixed legacy. Before he ascended to the presidency, he made a litany of promises. The key of those promises was to eradicate poverty, not to alleviate, to eradicate poverty, to create jobs for the Namibian people, to solve the housing crisis. So in terms of the Harambee Prosperity Plan, the social progression pillar was the main one that he focused on. And in 2015, in his first year of office, he doubled the pension grant of the old people, I think from 600 to 1,200. And we have about how many? Close to 200,000 people depending on that grant, then including my grandmother as well. So then there was also the issue of what this grant actually meant to these people. You know, us young people, we tend to dump our young kids with our grannies, whether it's at the villages or in various urban centers. So that actually helped a great deal for these grannies that were taking care of the young ones. His legacy is also one where one can speak about democracy. I was one of the most vocal critics of President Geingob. Not once was I being intimidated by the security cluster, whether it's the police, the intelligence service, or whatever the case might be. So that freedom to express yourself, and he made it very clear, no one will be arrested under my reign while I'm president. So we really need to give him credit there. However, we also know that he made various statements and promises about how he is going to transform society. For example, the issue of poverty. We now know that poverty, according to the World Bank, we have more than 1.6 million Namibians living in poverty. We have close to 1 million people, according to the Sek Dwellers Federation, that don't have access to dignified housing. We have the issue of unemployment, especially amongst the youth, that stands at 34%. We have the whole issue around the investment in agriculture, promoting food sovereignty. If you look at the budget statements during his term, we tended to spend more on mitigating drought and investing less in agriculture. A classical example would be the 2023-2024 national budget. Government has allocated close to 900 million for drought relief, but the expenditure dedicated to agriculture is less than 50 million. So we are planning for a natural calamity, but we are not planning for food security. So there's a difference between policy intent and policy impact. Again, the whole idea between the world of ideology, how you want things to be, and then the world of reality, how things actually are. He also made a promise in 2017 that he was going to get rid of all the SECs within 5 years. We now know that has not happened, and it will not happen, even in the unexpired term of his presidency. Whatever Bumba tries to do, it won't happen. So he has a mixed legacy, but the intention in terms of what he wanted to do, the rhetoric was good. The Namibian House, no one should feel left out, unity in diversity. I think any thinking Namibian wouldn't be against that. But the reality on the ground speaks otherwise. Namibia has become more tribal. I'm not blaming the president for this, but it's the perception out there that certain ethnic groups are benefiting more than others, especially the so-called executive tribe being the Awambo. They are benefiting from tenders, they are benefiting from jobs, they are benefiting from various other economic opportunities at the exclusion of minority ethnic groups. But the key question is this: to what extent is that true? Is it evidence-based, or is it just people seeing this on a daily basis and this is their perception, but it doesn't permeate throughout society?
Wonder, the legacy of the president?
I think Rui has captured most of them, but I just want to say this. If you are a leader, you need a team. Now, we need to go back to the people who are around him. Now, he had all these ideas, right? He had all these ideas, eradicating sheikhs, eradicating poverty. Of course, the way they're eradicating, you can't eradicate poverty because even in the Bible, there are poor people there. Maybe it was just a statement, but the intention was there, was there. Now, who was supposed to implement them? Did he have that team that was willing to carry this legacy forward? And even now with him gone, is the team that he was working with in a position to say, we are moving on? Now, because he has got a legacy that needs to be perpetuated, did he build that team around him? Or it's going to be like what you were saying, that people who are so scared of losing their jobs, they will now be shaking to say, where are we supposed to go? Were these people committed, right, to take his ideas and make them work, right? And how far did they go? And with him not being there, will the green hydrogen legacy be carried on? Will everything else that he was pushing, he was a leader, he will just say, I need to do this and this and this. But we need to look at the structures, where the structures put in place to say, we want to eradicate sheikhs. So we have got this team here that is going to work towards that. Yeah. Was that ever done? Then if you say the green hydrogen, we know there's a team. But there is also this gray area where State House and Parliament and government, where is the green hydrogen here? Is it being managed within a government structure or a State House structure? I think that these are all the things that we need to look at when we are saying, so what will his legacy be? Let me give you an example before you come in. I always talk about the former president, Ifike Pohamba. He brought up this massive infrastructure. Some of them, they haven't been used as we speak. The Negata or the dam, it is his legacy. So when we go back to say, before President Hage Geingob, what legacy did his predecessor he had? What is it that we are going to talk about? So a legacy, in my view, should not be about one person. It's about a whole structure that is being led by that one person. So if I look at what President Hage Geingob was trying to do, there's a gap between him and the implementation. So who was supposed to implement all his ideas? And how was he supposed to make sure that those who were supposed to implement are being checked out? So his legacy here is not in isolation or about one person. It's an administrative thing.
I hear you,
Yeah.
but we could also counter argue that if I own the ideas and I'm the captain of the ship, and the people on board the ship are not doing their work, I'll throw them in the ocean. He didn't throw anyone in the ocean. So if he was not pleased with the performance of his team, he would have gotten rid of some people. But I don't know. Rui, you wanted to say something?
It's just based on what Wanda said.
Yeah.
When politicians canvass for support, they promise people what they will do, not what they will not do. And the president was very clear on that. He even had ministers sign performance agreements. We know that some certain ministries or certain ministers have performed dismally. No one was fired. We also know that accountability stops with the chief executive officer. If you are the CEO of a company, you are the CEO and your general managers are not performing, the board of directors will not say, no, it's because it's the team around you. They'll just come for you because you are the head of that institution. They don't care about your management. If the management was not performing, it's either you institute punitive measures or you fire them or you change whatever needs to be. So accountability there stops with you as the head of the household. This whole mantra of an inclusive house, he was the head of that household. So if certain bricks are falling and there's leakage in the plumbing system, the lights are not working, the onus is on him to ensure that he takes out the whip, whoever is responsible for that, to implement it. So the buck stops with him in terms of accountability. No one will come and say it's because of Minister A, B, and C when we are looking at his legacy. Yes, of course, there are different people that are under him, but the buck ultimately stops with him. And if his legacy will be looked at, let's say 10 years from now, someone will not say it's because of Minister A, B, and C. They'll say it was President Geingob because he was the person that the Namibian people elected. He was the person that made a litany of promises to the Namibian people. They will not say it's because of the Minister of Trade or the Minister of Education. The buck ultimately stops with him. Responsibility stops with him. And he constituted that team because he had faith in that team. So if they are not delivering, he's also not delivering.
Corruption, yeah.
Rui, I've driven you into the corner that I wanted you to be and give that answer. So the legacy now, if we are going to go back and say, so what legacy are we talking about here? We just need to have 2 or 3 words to say, is it there or it's not there? Is it a legacy of success, or is it's a legacy of near misses and that kind of thing? Because there are a lot of things that he said he would do. Of course, find the grants that were given. We know that, and the sovereign, it's called the Sovereign Wealth Fund, it's still stuck with the same money that was put in. So we need to unbundle that to say, if we are talking about his legacy, without us sweetening things up, because we need to be so clear to say why this wasn't done and this wasn't done. Yes, I understand that he was supposed to have a team. I said the team, if the team is not working, you change it. So there was also this legacy of keeping people who were not performing. And it's a legacy where you just to surround yourself with people who say yes, this, and yes, this, that, and not even one who can stand up and say, no, I think this will not work.
Yeah, just to answer your question on what this legacy would be, we need to look at the policy intentions. What is it that he wanted to achieve, what he hoped to achieve, and then you look at the impact. What is the results on the ground? Of course, there were a host of other issues that also perhaps impeded his ability to deliver successfully. We know the drought that has been havoc in Namibia. We know COVID-19 that happened. A lot of businesses were closed. So under those circumstances, one can also make the argument, the counter-argument to say that the president was actually impeded on that. But COVID-19 was not there in these first 5 years, for example. And then what is the scorecard in terms of the Harambee Prosperity Plan 1? What was he able to achieve? If you said you wanted to service 20,000 urban in your first term and you're only able to deliver 1,000, did you succeed? Of course, that's a failure. What were the reasons for that failure? So the Harambee Prosperity Plan, moving from 1 to the second iteration, none of those, a significant number of those goals have not been achieved. In housing, in sanitation, in land delivery, none of those have been achieved. If you look at the record, it speaks for itself.
I have one question, because I don't know whether my director is saying my time is up or that it's time for a break, but let me just put this question to you quickly while I establish that. Nangolo Mbumba, too much debate is going on now. Is he president? Is he acting president? What powers come with an acting president? Or is he fully empowered? Should he have been sworn in? Because once you are sworn in, it is implied that you are now substantive head of state. All these kind of questions, and we see lawyers, Kadila Momo and many others putting out statements. What is your interpretation? I know that we are all legal laymen here, but at least our understanding.
Okay, but I think when we talk about this, we need to look at what the Constitution says. Article 34. What does it say? When the president dies, either the vice president comes in, or is the prime minister who comes in if the VP is not available, or the vice prime minister who comes in if the prime minister and the VP are not there, or if the president is impaired, the person whom he chooses can act, right? I'm not sure how this was done, but if I'm not mistaken, I read Article 34. It's implicit when it talks about the swearing in, right?
It doesn't talk about the swearing in.
What does it say?
It talks about the vice president taking over for the remainder of the period, or until the substantive head of state returns. But it doesn't really tell us that whether a person should now be sworn in. But I don't know whether swearing in actually makes any difference. But I think there's a symbolic, serious symbolic meaning to being sworn in. Because the question now that is being asked, and we've run out of time, is that 10 years from now, are we going to say Nangolo Mbumba was the fourth head of state of Namibia? Or do we count the substantive heads, for example?
I think that
Kgalema Motlanthe in South Africa, who took over from Mbeki, is considered the third president of South Africa, but he served for a very short period of time before Zuma took over. Yeah,
but look, if you look at Article 34, it's not so clear as to a swearing in. It talks about taking over.
Yes.
So how do we define this taking over? Does taking over means just moving in, or you have to be identified? And you are going to be identified or recognized as a president of a country. How are you going to be taking over?
Yeah.
And I think that article should actually be clear to say the taking over process involves this and that and that. Yes, I'm aware of the debate that is going out there. And that article also talks about if it's less than 12 months, right?
Yeah.
Before an election.
That he must serve that.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is no election that must come in. But if it's more than 12 months, then there must be a presidential election.
Within 90 days.
Still, there's a gray area there, because if we count from now until March next year, how many months?
Yeah, it's more than it's 13 months, but at least the elections would have taken place in November. So, and this only speaks about elections.
Yeah.
But Rui, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
No trouble.
There's no ambiguity. Article 29 is also very clear on that issue. It says that the president, the vice president, whoever is taking over, will serve as acting president for the unexpired term of the substantive head of state. It's there in the Constitution. So I hope the legal scholars will be able to interpret this better, because for me, from the little English that I know, it says he will serve as acting president. So what does that mean?
Yeah, wonderful. Gentlemen, I wish this time flew today, but thank you for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's today's show with Rui Tyitende and Wonder Guchu. Thank you for watching.